Someday, they're going to get smart. They're going to endorse President Trump. Because if you had Sleepy Joe, then nobody's going to be interested in politics anymore. That's going to be the end of that.
Well, the 46th president may be in office, but that's not stopping the 45th. Within the past month, former President Trump has been hinting that MAGA rallies could make their comeback. Take a listen.
Will we ever be able to attend another Trump rally?
Oh, yeah, sure. I think so. In fact, we're thinking about doing one relatively soon just to let everybody know that there's hope in the future.
So with Trump back on the road, does this confirm his run in 2024? So let's bring in our first guest of the second hour, Emmy Award-winning television host, New York Times bestselling author of Wake Up America, and host of the Bolling and Favre podcast, Eric Bolling. So, Eric, many reports, such as this one from the National Review, are saying that Trump will most likely begin holding rallies as soon as this month. So I want to ask you, what do you think the role President Trump will play over the next couple of months?
Well, first of all, Alex, thanks for having me on, and especially the number 5, if you get what I mean. You know, it's always fun trolling Fox that way. I think he should do these rallies. I've spoken to a lot of people surrounding Trump, the president. I've spoken to him, but not about this, and the people surrounding Trump about this. And I believe this is going to happen. I'm not sure the timing on it. Frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't happened prior to this. Not because I think it indicates he's going to run in 2024, because I think he has a massive following, as we all know, as many viewers here love the guy and want to see it. We loved his presence on those stages. It gave him also a ton of energy. It was just like filling his tank when he'd do the rallies. But I think more importantly, what he will do, it'll solidify him as the kingmaker in 2022 and maybe 2024. Here's how. He'll go to places like Alaska and go probably do rallies that won't be very friendly to Lisa Murkowski, the senator there who Trump blatantly does not like, has been vocal about saying he would rather have her replaced. Or he'll go to Liz Cheney's Wyoming district and maybe do a rally there. And you know, we all know he doesn't like Liz Cheney. I'm in South Carolina. He may do one here because he has some issues with the guy in South Carolina 7, Myrtle Beach, who went against or voted to have Trump impeached. I would bet that this guy will run into a rally at some point. Maybe Nancy Mason, South Carolina 1, both Republicans. These are all Republicans. Sure. So he'll continue to have that power. I mean, I think that's his real power going, or at least over the next year and a half going into the 2022 election, is being the kingmaker on the right. And then when, you know, he sees how it goes from there, and if the groundswell continues, then maybe he does make a run at 24.
I mean, you're exactly right, because, for example, just this morning, former President Trump put out a statement endorsing Susan Wright in the state of Texas. And he states, quote, "Today is election day in Texas. Go out and vote for Susan Wright. She will be strong on the border, crime, pro-life, our brave military and vets, and will always protect your Second Amendment. She will never let you down. Vote today." Now, I mean, this is back to his typical statements that he was doing back in the midterms prior, back in the election as well. Do you think that, for example, to your point, saying he's the kingmaker, that at the end of the day, the Trump endorsement is more than any policy that these people are putting forward?
Yeah, look, it's invaluable to someone who's trying to become an elected official on the right now. And it's a tall order right now because there's all this anti-right sentiment going on within the liberal Democrat Party. And so for a Republican to win, to be the Democrat, okay, you have to have unity behind the Republican side, and that unity requires Trump's endorsement. That's why there's a parade of people going down to Mar-a-Lago just to get the endorsement, because you have to show unity on the right, or you're going to lose handily against the general election against the Democrats. So you really, really need that. That's why these people who turn their back on Trump and aren't making their way to Mar-a-Lago and apologize, they should be. And I'll give you another example. Nikki Haley is a friend of mine. I know Trump world doesn't love Nikki Haley. She's a personal friend of mine. I think she's trying to at least make amends with President Trump. I can't say I know that for sure, but I think she's trying because she came out a little hard against him. You know, the question is, will he embrace her for whatever she wants to do? I'm not sure if she wants to run in 2024 herself, but whoever wants to run in 22 or 24, you better have the blessing of the guy in Mar-a-Lago, or you have a snowball's chance in hell of beating a Democrat and maybe not even becoming the nominee on the right.
And using Nikki Haley as an example, she even walked back some of those comments, saying that she would not run this past week if President Trump were to run once again. But
smart move on her part, because even if she does run and Trump runs, it's a bad idea to do it, to say that now. If you say I'm going to run even if he runs, then you will not raise any money, because any donor has to know, why would I put money behind a candidate that's going to run against the guy whom likely will win? I believe he would win as the nominee. But even if he doesn't win, he will ruin your chances of winning, because you disrespected him, because you stabbed him in the back. It's a very important thing. When there was, I'll tell you a story. I think everyone at Newsmax knows this. I was considering running for Congress right here in South Carolina 1. It's a Republican-held seat. Nancy Mace is a Republican. She kind of turned her back on Trump after she got elected, after he helped her get elected by being very supportive of her campaign. He was upset. I was hearing from people in South Carolina, big operatives. The way politics works is at the state level, representatives and senators, all the way up through national representatives and senators, et cetera. They're operatives. I was getting calls from operatives within South Carolina saying, run against Nancy Mace. She doesn't have the support of President Trump, whether she did or not, I don't know. But at the time, they said she didn't. But what I needed to do was to go down and talk to Trump about it. I had a conversation with everyone involved, and I decided not to do it. It just wasn't the time for personal reasons. My wife and I just have issues that we're working through with the loss of a son. So it wasn't the time to do it. But the point was, everyone realizes on every level of government, at least on the right, that if you want to be the nominee and if you want to win in a general election, you can't do it without Trump. So all these people who voted to impeach Trump, or these people who pushed back on Trump, Adam Kinzinger in Illinois, I'd go right after that guy. I'd go replace Adam Kinzinger. That would be my first stop. Go to Chicago and get Adam Kinzinger out of the Republican nomination.
Yeah, and I mean, so far, Trump has endorsed 16 candidates in the 2022 election cycle. Our viewers are looking them at their screen right now. But Nancy Mace, to your point that you said before, I mean, a lot of people said that she was a rising star in the Republican Party. And then after she won her election, she seemed willing to turn the page on the Trump era. And I think a lot of conservatives right now would say the same thing about Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, or even maybe Minority Leader McCarthy as well. I mean, he was really pushing Senator Tim Scott after his speech this week. So do you think that there is a part of the Republican Party, maybe Republican leadership in particular, that is willing to turn the page?
So interesting dynamic going on here. When a senator, don't forget they have 6-year terms, they don't come up for re-election. So, Lindsey Graham can go either way on support for Trump, and he doesn't have to worry about it for another 5.5 years. Mitch McConnell is entrenched. He doesn't have to worry about it. But a Republican representative like Kevin McCarthy has issues to worry about every 2 years. So he really has this dance. He's the minority leader in the House, so he's can't be too aggressive against Liz Cheney, but Trump wants Liz Cheney out. And so there's this dance, this tightrope dance for these people who don't want to go all in on, or, in the Trump camp, but still don't want to alienate the guy that could absolutely sink their opportunity every 2 years if you're a representative, or every 6 years if you're a senator. You notice these senators, as they get close to an election, get really friendly with Trump because they're extremely worried. Once they win, then they kick back a little bit and they do what the heck they want. You know what? The bottom line, one of the books I wrote, New York Times bestseller, was not only Wake Up America, but The Swamp.
Sure.
It is a swamp. DC is a swamp. It's disgusting. It's all about getting themselves reelected, getting that largesse, getting our tax dollars, make sure that gravy train keeps going for them.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why people voted for President Trump in 2016, to drain that very issue that you're talking about right there. But Eric Bolling, I really appreciate you coming.
That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, no, you got to plug the book. But Eric, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Always good to see you, Alex.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.